Hello everyone, and welcome to The Blank Space. And today we are lucky enough to have Stephen Kaplan. Stephen Kaplan is an award-winning American playwright whose work blends sharp humor with emotional depth, exploring themes of identity, belonging, and human connection. Kaplan began writing plays at the age of 15. His debut work, which won at the Blank Theatre's Young Playwrights Festival, entitled And Jack Came Tumbling After, received productions at esteemed venues including San Diego's Old Globe Theatre and in New York at Lincoln Center's American Living Room series. Amazing. Kaplan's early achievements in the Young Playwrights Festival, specifically being a 5-time winner, set the stage for his continued contributions to theatre, and he has since returned to the festival as a mentor, guiding new generations of playwrights through the same program that helped launch his career. Kaplan has established himself as a vital voice in contemporary theatre. His critically acclaimed plays include Exquisite Potential, the story of a father who believes his son may be the Messiah; A Real Boy, a darkly comedic exploration of parenthood and conformity; and Tracy Jones, a heartfelt and humorous look at loneliness and identity, which received a national New Play Network rolling world premiere. His work has received numerous notable accolades, including the New Jersey Playwrights Contest, the Barber Award, and fellowships from the New Jersey State Council of the Arts. Kaplan has a singular voice which embraces both the absurd and the deeply human. His plays have been produced off-Broadway, regionally and internationally, earning praise for their originality, warmth, and wit. He also contributes to musical theatre as a lyricist and book writer, and currently serves as the New Jersey regional representative for the Dramatist Guild. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you started off at YPF.
I did indeed. I blame y'all for everything.
That's amazing. It's such a special thing that they do there. Daniel really started something wonderful, and I'm so happy that it continues and that amazingly talented people like you come back and mentor people. How does it feel to be able to do that?
It's an amazing feeling, and it's really strange because it feels like yesterday that I was being mentored, and um this is I'm working right now with my current mentee, and it feels it's very surreal because it feels like I was just in their seat before, and it also feels very natural that this is kind of, of course this is where I ended up, and how I want to keep giving back.
Yeah. And how many years have you mentored exactly?
This is actually my second year.
This second year.
It took them this long to ask. I don't know, but
I know, right? Get on it,
how dare
guys.
they?
Come on.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'm going to be in one of the plays this year as well. I think this is my fourth time, I think. I just love taking part in it. It's just, I can't say that I'm surprised by how amazing the plays are, because I remember being a young person surrounded by brilliant artists, but it still blows me away. It still absolutely blows me away.
Completely. And I think part of the reason why the blank is so good at what it does, is because it recognizes that from the very beginning, it recognized that age does not equate talent. It's not that suddenly, you have to be at a certain point to have written something. And the the opportunity for young writers to see their work produced, and in such quality. I mean, that was what it meant to me. That I remember, that I'd had, a reading at school before, and my
Mhm.
friends, and it felt very, oh, let's put this together. But the professionalism that they treated me with, made me go, oh,
Mhm.
I may be 15, but I'm being treated like a professional writer. It encourages more writers, to do that, because I think,
Absolutely.
that's what young writers are drawn to that.
Yeah, I think that that's something that as an artist we all seek, is not just being acknowledged and not just being given accolades, but being treated as valuable.
Completely.
Yeah, because it doesn't happen that often.
No, no. And the importance of that, and often for a young writer, it's their first opportunity to kind of recognize this is how I should be treated. And
Mhm.
it spoiled me in a lot of ways because after my experiences with the blank, I'd go into spaces that were not treating me that way, and I went, no, this is not how it should be.
I love that you spoke up because most people are like, I'm gonna get fired. And it's just so interesting because I see writers mistreated so often, and I'm like, we literally wouldn't be here without this script.
Completely, yeah. And I mean, and it's still very much, I mean, that's kind of why the work that I do with the Dramatists Guild is so important to me because the writer is the last to be thought of, and yet
Mhm.
the piece couldn't exist without us.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so funny. You said before, you don't have to, you can be young and basically be established. And the opposite is true as well, where you can work for so long, decades and decades, and not really get anywhere, especially if you're a writer. It's one thing for an actor to like grab a monologue and just go do it. It's another thing for a writer to actually get it all together so that someone can see it.
But a really important thing too, I think a lot of writers, the not that they have to self-produce, but I think there's a fine line for writers too, finding, that making opportunities for ourselves at times, not just waiting for somebody else to make that happen, but also recognizing we don't always have to do that, and finding
Mhm.
that, I've done both. I've had the luxury of a lot of theaters wanting to do my work, which is lovely. But I think there's also something that especially early on, I learned, I remember the very first show I put together was not one that I wrote, but I remember I got a bunch of friends together. We rented a theater in the Valley and put on a show. And that taught me more than anything, how important it is to put your all into everything you're doing.
Amazing. And how did it feel being 15 years old and going to the exact opposite coast of the country to New York City where Broadway is and having Lincoln Center put up a little thing so everyone could see how brilliant you are? How did that feel?
Great. Well, I was not 15 when that happened.
No, it was later on.
That happened. So Lincoln Center, actually, they don't do it. I don't think they do it anymore. The American Living
No.
series was really fantastic. It was for primarily actually for directors, and actually directed and Jack Came Tumbling After, which was my first piece.
Nice.
When I was 19 or 20, I think, is kind of because as I had moved to New York. Lincoln Center at the time was actually using a space called Here, which still exists, where my
Hmm.
first actually real job was working at Here. But to have the recognition of, being under the auspices of Lincoln Center was just incredible, And with that very first play that I ever wrote, I was in a high school musical theater program at Carnegie Mellon. They had a summer program.
Amazing.
Because I started out as a performer, and because that's, as young people, sometimes that's all we know. We go, oh, I perform, that because that's what's there. And there was a playwriting elective. Everybody else kind of in the class wrote a little sketch or something like that, and I wrote this one act play, and that's what ended up winning the blank and kind of winning some other festivals and getting produced. And it was an amazing thing, and that I just kind of went, oh, I can do this. I never thought
Mhm.
about doing it.
Right. What did you think you were going to do? What trajectory were you on before that?
I was going to be an actor. I was going to be on Broadway. That was what I was going to do, and be a movie star and all of these things. And I still act and I still love doing it. But I ended up settling in writing. For the longest time, I was joked I was a triple threat because I was a musical theater major, but I also was studying playwriting and I was studying directing. And when I graduated, luckily I went to, at NYU, I was at Playwrights Horizons Theater Studio, and
Hmm.
they let you do all of that. But I didn't know kind of what I wanted to be when I grew up because I wanted to do all of those things. But then I also wanted a steady paycheck and
Yeah.
insurance and to raise a family. And so I actually fell into teaching, which I'm still doing. I run a high school theater program, and writing made the most sense because even before the pandemic, as a writer, I didn't need to be there necessarily for the whole process. I could Skype into a rehearsal or something
Hmm.
like that. And so I kind of doubled down with the writing, and it was something that, thankfully I've been able to keep doing while teaching as well.
That's wonderful. Are you talking about the Hair Art Center?
I was actually, I helped in their box office, and then I kind of helped in the
Amazing.
cafe. Here is a fantastic space down on 6th Avenue in New York, and they have a bunch of different theater spaces. It's where the Vagina monologue started.
Hmm.
Metzler's piece started there, and it was my first real paying job to kind of be there. And there was a playwriting group there that's where I ended up meeting my husband. So I mean, I thank here for a lot of different things.
Amazing. When people ask me a lot of the time, how should I start this? That's what I always say. I started interning at a theater company in New York. I worked in the office. I was a gopher. I painted sets. I did all sorts of stuff, and then I ended up getting a job working on sets. And my first off-Broadway play was there. And so that's how I got my equity card. And it's one of the best ways you can do it is to actually find a job in the realm of what you want to do, but not think that it's going to be exactly what you want right away.
Yeah, completely. And it's, so much about this industry is it's fun sometimes to kind of play backwards,
Yeah.
kind of go, oh, all of this happened because of this, but that's not at all how I would not have connected those things. And that was, being able to work at a theater and be surrounded by people that just love making art was the best thing that I could do.
Yeah, it's very nurturing and it's like you've found your place finally, right?
Completely. Yeah.
What is your suggestion to someone who is saying to themselves, I know I want to do something in theater. I'm not quite sure what it is. I'm good at so many things. What would you tell them to do?
Pick one thing to start, and kind of, recognize, and it's something that I wish I would have followed more so myself, not getting frustrated and going like, but I want it and jumping around. But
Mm,
simultaneously, I want to say it's okay to jump around and try to things, kind of, oh, I'm going to try a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And also be willing to do it not as a means to an end. My thought about working it here was not, oh, I want to get a production here. It was, this is a great place to work and be surrounded by people. And
hmm.
I think when people go into something expecting something, that, oh, I'm going to intern at this theater and that's going to lead to this, it feels a little mercenary. And people can sense that, if an opportunity
Yeah.
comes up, that's great, but it has to come from, I just want to be of service. I want to be here and I want to learn and absorb as much as I can.
Yeah. The joy of being part of it.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, none of us is getting making a huge paycheck from any of this. And
No,
um,
not sure.
and it's also an industry about working with people and collaborating. So you want to be a good person and you want people to hopefully want to work with you. And the best way to do that is to come from a place of joy and to come from a place of I I want to be just surrounded by people that are really excited to be doing all of this.
Yeah, and immersing yourself in whatever the task of the moment is, even if it's not something that's ideal, like being like, okay, I'm going to learn about this, even though it's not something
Completely.
I do.
Completely. And being able to recognize, yeah, okay, I didn't like that.
Mhm.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people have a, assumption about you never know. And, and also that could show you, oh, there's actually something about that that's interesting. And even if you never want to do it again, I have such an appreciation for I'll reverse this a little bit, but like one of the things we make our students do at the school where I teach is they all have to do technical credits and backstage. They learn so much about that because and even if they never want to work backstage again, just having an understanding of, oh my gosh, I didn't think about what a jerk I am as an actor to the sound people when, I don't return my mic on time or whatever that is,
Hmm.
until there's that mic person going, I need your mic. All of those things just it gives us a much deeper appreciation.
Absolutely. And then when you ever move on to film and television, they always know when it's a theater actor.
Yeah,
They're always like, "Oh, you guys always hang up your clothes and you you make sure you get out of the room quickly so we can take the clothes back and wash them." And like they always know when it's a theater actor because we learn to be a little bit more considerate than other
exactly.
people.
Exactly.
Have you seen anything on Broadway or off Broadway lately that you've really enjoyed?
A lot. I'm currently a Tony voter, which is amazing. So I
Ooh,
get to
that's so
see
fun.
everything on Broadway. This season especially has been a really, really exciting season. Musicals and plays. Original things like musicals with like maybe happy ending is gorgeous and beautiful and original. Dead Outlaw is exciting and crazy and rock and roll. And then you've got new plays like Purpose, and Brandon Jacobs Jenkins is just astounds me with everything he writes. English, which was just a beautiful, beautiful new play. Eureka Day, which I still consider a new play, even though it's up for revival. So I mean, we've got this amazing theater happening right now, and unfortunately, I mean, I'm never gonna bemoan being a Tony voter, but because of it, I haven't gotten to see as much off Broadway as I would like to.
Hmm.
But there's so much exciting happening right now, and there's so much also exciting happening just regionally as I'm actually the Northeastern regional rep for the Guild. I was New Jersey regional rep and then became joined on council. And one of the biggest things we're trying to get people to recognize is, as amazing as there's theater going on in New York, theater's happening everywhere. And you being
Yep.
LA know this, that I think that there's such exciting voices and pieces happening in your backyard. And I think people think, oh, I need to, yes, go see the touring productions because we need to keep them going.
Yes.
But the theater happening, down the street from you, there's really exciting things happening everywhere. And the arts are under attack in a lot of ways,
Yes.
the NEA and defunding. And I think it's scary, but I have no doubt that theater's not going to survive. It's going to survive.
Yeah.
And I think that the art that people are creating right now is vital and exciting
Yes.
and angry, but also joyous.
I'm happy to see more original work coming back because for a long time it was, this is a musical of a movie or a stage production of a movie, or, it's a lot of, I love Shakespeare, but I don't want to be in or see The Tempest for the 20th time.
Yes.
You know?
I I was
So,
talking to somebody about who they were voting for revival of a play, and them talking about, well, Romeo and Juliet I'm not necessarily going to vote for. I don't think Shakespeare needs it. I don't think he needs a Tony Award right now.
no, he's
Um,
good.
he's good. I think he's all right.
He's
So it
good.
was a very exciting production. That's not it was a very cool, very exciting production. But just as far as kind of talking about new work.
Yeah, that is something that is also happening a little bit more in the US, which I like. And, I was in high school in England in the early 90s, and there was so much cross-cultural casting and seeing things in a completely different way that, had a lot of commentary on what was going on currently politically or whatever. And I'm really happy to see that there's quite a lot of that going on, especially in regional theatre houses. It's important. It's really important. What do you think the next generation of playwrights are going to be focusing on? Like, do you ever see any trends?
I mean, something that has been exciting that I've gotten more interested in. I don't know if it's necessarily younger playwrights. I think there's something about the idea, whether it's immersive theater, whether it's just the idea of experience, that there's a reminder of how vital it is for theater to be done with people together, especially after the pandemic. I think it reminded us just how, for me at least, why I love theater. And it can only happen when there's people that come together. And it doesn't have to be a huge group. There's some amazing theater happening now where it's, an actor and an audience member, but
Mm-hmm.
just that communion that happens. And I think that there's a lot of writers that are starting to embrace that theatricality, not necessarily in big sets or anything like that, but just the essence of what theatricality is, which is this happens at this one time because people are together.
Yeah, and I want to remind people, I mean, you mentioned the pandemic, and we all did stop going out as much as we were before. And if you're someone who hasn't gone and seen live theatre for a while, I want to remind you of what it feels like after you watch a play. It just, it completely changes your cells, you know?
Yeah, it is religious to me, kind of
Mhm.
whatever that is, because it's something that, when you're breathing the same air as the audience members around you, as the actors, as the designers that have been there, that and this ephemeral nature of it, that this performance is only happening this way right now. And you're completely right. And I think that people forget that. People forget how much we need that.
Absolutely. What are your top three favorite musicals?
Of all time,
Mm-hmm.
I could probably answer that pretty easily.
Ooh,
So Falsettos, William
so good.
Falsettos. It was the first Broadway show I ever saw. I grew up in Los Angeles, and when I was 14, I think, I took a trip with my mom to New York, and Falsettos was the very first show we saw the week that we were there. It blew me away. I'd seen tours and that, but there's something about Bill Finn's voice that felt so accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And even as a 14-year-old, as who I was not fully out yet, and seeing the story happening on stage of a character that was just a year younger than me, experiencing his father, like, so Falsettos for me has always been the number one. And then my other two favorite musicals, I think, are probably Gypsy. I think is kind of the
So good.
perfect show,
Yeah.
and a tie between, I think, Ragtime and Once on This Island. I'm not sure which Flaherty and Aaron's play to go to, musical to go to.
Nice. I love that you were talking about how falsettos helped you sort of identify with characters on stage. It's very important. Representation is so, so important. And right around that time that you were a teenager, I was in college probably. There was Rent. Did you see that when you were a
I
teenager?
I did. Rent came out I think my freshman year of college. So
Hmm.
maybe right around the same age that way. And completely, you're right. When you seeing these characters on stage, and I was not a hip kid at all. So like I was not an East Village kid.
Ditto.
But seeing again, these were, love songs sung by very different couples than we'd seen for years and years on stage. Felt groundbreaking and felt very much
Yeah.
going again. And I think part of the reason Rent had such a connection to people was exactly like you're saying, that we'd not seen something like that in a
Yeah.
long time or ever really.
I mean, and or heard anything like that. I
Yeah.
mean, there were people who, I mean, their voices were so, rock and roll or punk rock or, it was just such a completely different thing. And when you were saying, his voice was accessible before, it's like kind of that same thing. I mean, when you really get into it, if you're going to do, Rent 8 days a week, you really do have to know how to support your breath, but it feel like a rock concert.
Well, and it also, I remember living in New York because it was when I first moved there, and it was one of the first that I know of, like, lotteries, and but
Yeah.
would line up, and I remember lining up, and friends that I actually am still friends with today, who I met online at Rent, to get tickets, and they were accessible tickets, they weren't
Yes.
huge prices, and I'm so glad that so many shows continue to do that. And on one hand, I'm really glad that it's digital. You don't have to wait all day for it. There was something about that. But on the other hand, there was an investment. We spent the night to get tickets.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever do the thing where, I think it was always like a handful of like kind of huffy people would leave after the first act and then people would kind of like run in and like try to find empty
Oh,
seats?
no. Well,
Yeah.
I did try to second act a show once. I mean, not that was like to run in. I got so scared and I ran away. I never got to do it. So to actually really second act a show. But no, I didn't know that happened there.
Yeah, and I remember when I went to see it, I was actually in auditions for it. And at the time, the way that Telsey did it is they would audition, they would like rehearse you every time they auditioned you. So every audition was more like a rehearsal.
Mhm.
And then you had to go see the show a few times. And I remembered they had those standing, you just kind of like
Yeah,
stand
yeah,
at the, and it was the first time that I'd ever done that for a show. And for some reason, I was like a young theatre dork. And I thought, my God, this is so cool. People don't stand to see theatre anymore. And like way back when it was only standing,
yeah,
you know?
true, exactly. Yeah, yeah. You're standing there watching it.
Right. It was so interesting to me. I remembered thinking, oh, well, we stand for music. Why don't we ever stand for this? It's
True.
so interesting. If you could bring back any musical and put a twist on it, what would you do?
Oh my gosh. The first thing that comes to mind actually is I'm nervous that I'm actually saying this because my son will hate me for advertising it. He has I think, kind of actually a brilliant idea to bring back Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, but make it techno color and to do
Oh,
like to electrify that score. I don't necessarily. I think it's a brilliant idea. That's just when you said that. That's the first thing that came to mind.
how old is your son?
He's 18. He's 18.
Okay. Oh, wow. So does he still live with you guys or is he
No, he
out?
just finished his first year of college. I know. It's very strange.
-5. He's not allowed to ever leave me.
Oh, yeah. No, it does indeed go fast. It does indeed. But he's
Oh
home for
my
the
God.
summer, so that's good. That's a good thing.
That's
Um,
did having a kid ever did change how you view the world or how you write about the
Oh,
world?
completely. I actually stopped writing for a while. My very first plays that I wrote, were with the blank, and I was young, and it also came very easily because I wrote because I wanted to write, because
Hmm.
I had a story to tell. And then I actually, in my early 20s, moved back to Los Angeles after living in New York and wanted to do TV writing. And at that point, TV writing, when I was living in LA, all your spec scripts were nowadays a spec script, you would be writing a new pilot or something of your own, your voice. That time it was all the spec scripts were, how best can you mimic somebody else's voice? I had my sample, my spec script of
Interesting.
Six Feet Under and my Gilmore Girls and my Boston Public and all these things. And so, which was great. And I was good at that. But it was all the writing I was doing, I felt like was, okay, how can I imitate somebody else's voice to get a job? And it felt very much, I'm writing to get a job. I'm writing so I can get paid. I'm writing to, and I lost for a while my love of writing. And so I
Mhm.
actually stopped for a while. And then I was teaching and my son was born. And when my son was maybe about a year and a half, I had an idea for a play again. And that's kind of when I went back to that was exquisite potential that you talked about. And that reminded me of why I love to write. So
Mm.
so much of actually it's funny. My husband jokes that you can kind of track the age of my son based on the plays I write because there are kids in the plays that sometimes get a little bit older. But being a parent profoundly changed me and made me look at the world and start questioning, okay, why am I writing? What am I trying to do with all of this? And for me, writing is part of my way of being able to make our world better for him. I mean, that's maybe high and lofty to think about that, but kind of
No, I 100% agree.
I want my audiences to be affected by something or to question or to, and I'm always a glass half full person. And so I want to make our world better. And so his existence into the world kind of reminded me of why I want to write. And so answering your question completely,
Yeah.
his existence has affected everything that I do now.
It's so interesting. I remember this little girl, her mother wrote me about how she loved how I wore my hair natural. And I was never allowed to wear my hair natural on television. But when I wasn't working, I would always wear it naturally curly. And, I thought, well, what a shame that she can only see it on my social media, though. And at that point, I started to very strongly suggest to people, well, why don't I wear my hair natural? Why don't I wear my hair natural? And it took a lot. No one wanted it natural. Nobody. I had to keep like doing blowouts for to actually be on screen. And there was definitely a correlation between when I would book jobs and when I wouldn't, depending on how I looked when I auditioned. And in recent years, because there have been more Black people and people in the space who have Black loved ones, people have been like, yes, please wear your hair natural, wear it in braids, wear it, and it is so important for young people, actually, even people our age, to be able to go to the theater and be like, wow, okay, maybe I'm not the same as this person, but I already feel a connection just because we look the same.
I mean, it's what theater can do and should do, with the stories that we tell. One of the initiatives that I'm proud of, I'm the chair of the education committee for the Dramatists Guild. And one of the things that we
Amazing.
worked on, it's called expanding the canon. And it's about, especially in schools, getting teachers, educators to think about the work that they're teaching and to try to include more diverse voices. Because when I first came on the committee, there was a lot of talk about let's try to do this at the college level and try to get college professors to change their syllabi. And I urged them, I said, I think that's too late because at that point,
Mm.
if you're studying theater at university, you've already been exposed to it. You've already made a decision that this is something I want to do. We need to reach people, in middle school and in high school and have them see, oh, wait, that's a story like mine. Those are characters that look like me or sound like me. And that doesn't always happen. And I think one of the things I'm really proud of is really trying to get educators to think differently about the work that they're doing and at least expose the students to all different voices because that's how we build our audience. That's how we build future theater makers as well. Kind of as you're saying, being able to recognize ourselves on stage even if it's something, I am not Mama Rose in Gypsy, but there's aspects of that that I understand.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's sort of how, for a long time, a few decades ago and before, people thought, well, minorities don't like to go and see theatre. We never see them in the theatre. But then when things like The Lion King or Color Purple ended up in theatre, you look around at the audience and most of the audience is black.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show we're just waiting for something that we identify with, you
Yeah.
know? Like most people are not going to go and see Cats 17 times like I did.
No, did you see the revival of Cats?
I did see the revival,
Oh no,
yes.
the one that was off Broadway recently.
The,
That was
oh no, I saw the one that was like about 10 years ago.
Broadway one, or yeah, which
Mhm.
I think was again. a somewhat recreation of certain ways in
Yes.
new choreography. But there's an off-Broadway one that's hopefully moving. I would love for it to move. That's all set like in the like the drag world, and it's brilliant.
Brilliant.
That was one of the best things that I've ever seen. And for the first time, I've talked about Andrew Lloyd Webber a lot in this, yeah, but the like cats made sense. Like memory made sense. Like there's things I'm going, oh my gosh. And it was
Right.
a brilliant way to reinvent that show, but almost find kind of, oh, this is what this show is about.
Oh, I never even thought about that. I love it so much. I don't know, but I've always thought like how everyone says they hate it, and yet it was on Broadway for so many years. I'm like, who's watching it then? Can't just be me.
Yeah, it was one of the first things I remember seeing. I saw the national tour when it came to Los Angeles growing up, and I had the program, and I tried to get, I think I was in second or third grade, and I, tried to get my school to, my elementary school, like, we need to do Cats. And, I don't know. There's something about it that I think that is still that does affect people. I still don't know what it quite means, but
I just understood when I was a little girl that it was like a collection of stories.
Mhm.
So, I was just kind of watching it in that way and just like taking it for what it was. And I think I still kind of relive like my youth every time I listen to the
Yeah.
soundtrack or I watch it. Is there a specific playwright from any era whose writing really profoundly speaks to you?
Other than Bill Finn, I mean, John Guare is the one that,
Mm.
for me, there's something about his work that has always. I remember I had a VHS tape that I'd gotten from somebody there was a Broadway revival of House of Blue Leaves. That was an amazing, amazing cast. But I remember seeing it and thinking it was the funniest thing I've ever seen and the most devastating thing I've ever seen. And so much of Guare's work is like that. It's this absurd that has a huge heart and ache, but looking at the world. I mean, it's how I would love to be writing. And kind of someone more contemporary who's doing that also is, I think, David Lindsay-Abaire does that with his work. I just saw Kimberly Akimbo, the musical version, again, because one of our best friend's daughters in the tour. And so we got to go see it, which was magical and wonderful. But that piece, again, the absurdity of it, but the way that David also just can capture absurdity, but the honesty and truth and these stories that just feel very human and very much
Mhm.
kind of like, for me, that's how I view the world. Where this absurd. Did anybody else see that? That's bizarre how you're looking at that. And yet I think those two writers for me have best captured kind of how I see the world.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's very inspiring when you find someone whose work just makes you want to do that or be that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so inspiring. Um, how do you feel about Broadway ticket prices these
Oh,
days?
it makes me sick. I mean, but I also, there's a great series with Freakonomics talking about it just recently about the economics of Broadway. It was a three-part series, and though it's an impossible solution because it's going back to what we talked about, kind of how theater works. It's about people being together, and it's not something that you can make cheaper in certain ways, to still
Mhm.
value and pay the artists and do that and recognize it as a piece of art. Money has to come from somewhere. I mean, I would love for that money to not be coming from audience members, to be coming from taxpayers,
Mhm.
from
Yeah.
corporations, from places, to do that, to be able to subsidize that. So, it's astronomical, for these things. And I don't know how people afford it. And becomes then very much, as we are talking about, oh, you see a Broadway show because you're this kind of person who has that kind of money.
Hmm.
And you're forgetting about the whole audience. But then on the flip side, I'm looking at these things, the amount of people pay for a concert, for all of that, the
That is also ridiculous, though. I've not
yeah,
been to see live music for a very long time because I used to be able to get tickets to see a great band for like $50. Now
yeah.
it's like 500.
I still remember. I remember. Like, I'm talking like an old man now, but I remember. I think it was $50 at. So growing up, Phantom of the Opera was this is the Andrew Lloyd Webber um, was, and I loved Phantom. I love Phantom.
Oh, I've seen it 6 times. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
and
yes.
I invited Michael Crawford to my bar mitzvah. So
I have to tell you, he's one of the reasons I'm an actor. When I was a little girl, there was a show called Some Mothers Do Have 'Em in England. His physical comedy. Oh my
Oh my
God.
gosh.
Sorry. Go
Yeah.
on.
No, no. Yeah, he didn't even RSVP to my bar mitzvah, so I'm not fully involved.
Oh,
But that's okay. His performance changed my life. But I remember I think in Los Angeles, I feel like the tickets were $50. I think that was kind of what, and I remember, my dad, humping and grumping about it, but that it was $50. But I go by, oh my gosh, $50 to see a Broadway show now, and that was for good
yeah.
seats. The prices right now, I actually just literally this morning did a lesson with my ninth grade theater students talking about the business of Broadway and going through the Broadway grosses and kind of the average ticket price and the top ticket price. And some of these shows, it's their average ticket price is $200, something like that for an average price. And I am grateful that there are some seats that a lot of the shows are doing to try to make affordable.
Hmm.
It's hard to get those seats, and it's hard to, and to do that. And it requires also a lot of flexibility, for people, oh, I don't know until the day before whether I can do that. And those people often don't have the flexibility to take a day off work or to do that,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I wish we could figure out a way to solve the economics of it to still pay the artists what we deserve to be paid, but also recognize that audiences, in order to build an audience, you have to have an audience that can afford to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the last several times I've gone to see anything, it's been me by myself because I knew that was the easiest way to do it. And I would just be like, I'm going to go and see. And I would wait until 7:30 and be like, anyone not show up? And then just kind of, go in and, sit wherever. But it's so different in like Europe, like you said, taxes, the actual government does support the arts. And so everyone can afford to go and watch it.
Exactly. And you also then are more willing to take a chance on things. That's the thing.
Yes.
Also, then, going back to, again, one of the things we were talking about, exciting art doesn't always get the best reviews, doesn't always appeal to everybody. But if you're paying $400 for you and a date to go, well, you want to make certain that it's something that, has been vetted in a certain way.
Yeah.
And so it becomes an experience, which is lovely, but then it becomes a luxury item. And I don't think that theater should be a luxury item. It's
No, it's so interesting the way that money has changed. I mean, I remember when I was in college in the 90s, I did smoke and I could fill my gas tank and get a pack of cigarettes for $20. And when I moved to New York and I was a young person in New York, a friend and I could go and see a show and then go to like, a nice Thai restaurant on Ninth Avenue and spend like $100 between the two of us, or even less possibly. And now it's it's an investment.
completely. I was trying to figure out how I was saying this. The reason why I even started falling in love with theater was maybe I romanticize this story, but I think my parents told me this. When I was little, they had season tickets to like the community theater and where we lived, and it was cheaper for them just to buy me a ticket than to hire a babysitter. And they just expected I'd fall asleep. He's not going to want to watch Neil
Yeah.
Simon's Come Blow Your Horn. But I remember just being mesmerized, and they ended up just buying me an extra ticket for the season, and I loved every show, but it was because it was affordable. It was,
Yeah.
it was cheaper than a babysitter was. And
So I grew up in Nigeria, but we lived in England when I was 3 and 4. And I vividly remember theatre when I was little. I remember going to see The King and I remember going to see The Sound of Music. I remember going to see Annie. I remember it vividly. And I was tiny. But it was important to my parents to take me to these things so that they wanted to show me a little bit of everything so that I knew what was out there. We went to museums, all different sorts of museums, and people don't do that kind of stuff
yeah,
a lot anymore.
yeah,
Because, like you said, it's expensive. Even museums, that used to be free or cost like, just donate what you like. They can't afford to do that anymore.
yeah. And that is, I mean, there are some theaters out there that are trying to do like the pay what you can model, when I think
Hmm.
that's fantastic. It's they're struggling, but but the work that they do is so exciting, and because the audiences are there and they go, you know what? I will pay a little bit more next time because I've done this, or people are willing to take a risk. And I wish that more theaters were in a place to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, maybe one day wealthy actors will, choose a theater and be like, okay, I'm going to be a benefactor,
Yeah. I would
That
love.
would be really
Yeah.
nice. So both of us are going to be around for the Young Playwrights Festival this year.
Yes.
So if you guys want to hang out with us, you should come. It's if in case you don't know, we read tons and tons and tons of plays, and then we pick we pick a bunch and we fly these young people, some of them as young as like 10, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, out to LA, and we stage their plays with professional actors. And when I say professional, I mean like some people in these plays are really, really well known. So it's a great opportunity to see good theater for not too much money.
Mhm.
And it's a great opportunity to, be inspired by our youth. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Stephen. I really appreciate it. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you so much. And again, just thank you to the blank for doing what the blank does and
Yes.
nurturing the next generation of artists.
Absolutely. And you're in the mix. So, thank you for doing that. You're so brilliant, and your mentee is very lucky. Very, very lucky. I will see you at the festival.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And, just a little bit of encouragement to go out and find your joy. Okay. Do something that makes you happy. Take care.